My dad handed my brother a check for $350,000 to buy his dream house cash. Then, he turned to me with a straight face and said, "Rachel, you'll cover this month's mortgage on my rental property, right? You're doing fine." My brother smirked, sliding the check into his jacket like he'd earned every penny. They thought I was just the quiet, reliable daughter who would keep paying for everyone else's lifestyle without asking questions. But what my dad completely forgot was whose name was actually on the deed to that rental property, and who had been secretly funding his business accounts for the past 3 years. I didn't yell. I just smiled, took out my phone, and called my real estate attorney right in front of them. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached, and follow until the end to see how it all unfolded. My name is Rachel, and at 28 years old, I've built a solid, quiet career as a financial analyst. I deal with numbers, contracts, and hard facts every single day. Things that make logical sense. Unfortunately, logic has never applied to my family. My father, Arthur, is 55 and has spent his entire life running a small, chaotic home improvement business. And then there's my 30-year-old brother, Brandon, the undisputed golden child of the household. Brandon has made a career out of starting things and never finishing them. Every few months, he stumbles into a new, life-changing business venture that inevitably collapses, leaving behind a trail of unpaid bills and maxed-out credit cards. Every single time, my father steps in with an open wallet, dusting Brandon off and telling him, "Don't worry, son, everyone makes mistakes." Meanwhile, when I worked 3 jobs through college to avoid student loans, my father called it building character, and didn't contribute a single cent. For years, I accepted my role as the quiet, self-sufficient daughter who never asked for help. But Arthur didn't just expect me to take care of myself. He gradually started expecting me to take care of him, too. It all came to a head on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Arthur called a mandatory family dinner at his house, claiming he had an important, life-changing family announcement that couldn't wait. Walking through that front door, I thought we were celebrating a business milestone. I had no idea I was walking into an absolute slap in the face. The smell of roast beef filled the dining room, but the atmosphere felt strangely tense. As soon as we sat down, my father set his glass of wine on the wooden table, cleared his throat with great importance, and looked directly at Brandon with pride beaming from his face. "Son," Arthur said, reaching into his jacket pocket and sliding an official white envelope across the table. "You've had a tough couple of years, but it's time for a fresh start. This is $350,000. Shears check. Buy that house you looked at in town, cash. No mortgage, no stress." Brandon tore the envelope open, his eyes widening as he held up the check like a trophy. "Dad, this is incredible," he cheered, flashing me a triumphant smirk. Finally, a real home of my own. I sat frozen, trying to process where $350,000 had even come from. But before I could process it, my father turned his attention to me, his warm expression instantly flattening into a routine, businesslike glare. "Now, Rachel, down to practical matters," Arthur said casually, as if asking me to pass the salt. "I'm a bit strapped for cash this month after pulling that together. I need you to cover the $2,800 mortgage payment on the rental property on Pine Street." Brandon laughed softly, leaning back in his chair. "Yeah, Rachel, do your part. Family has to support family, right?" I stared at the two of them, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the heavy silence. What my father had completely forgotten, or willfully ignored, was the history of that Pine Street property. 2 years ago, when the house was facing tax foreclosure due to Arthur's poor financial management, I stepped in. I paid off over $30,000 in back taxes and delinquent liens. To protect my investment and keep the property afloat, we refinanced the entire mortgage directly into my name. Legally, I was the sole owner listed on the deed. My father had simply continued acting as the informal property manager, collecting $3,500 in cash rent from the tenants every month while sending the $2,800 mortgage payment to the bank. Over time, he had convinced himself that it was still his property and that I was just a quiet placeholder holding the paperwork. A quick calculation ran through my mind. My father's small business barely broke even, and he certainly didn't have $350,000 sitting in a savings account. Looking at his nervous twitch and the way he avoided direct eye contact, the terrifying truth hit me. Arthur had taken out a massive high-interest home equity line of credit against his own primary residence just to hand Brandon that cashier's check. He was completely over-leveraged, drowning in debt, and fully expecting me to quietly bankroll his reckless gamble while my brother lived rent-free in a brand-new house. "I'm not paying it," I said, setting my fork down onto my plate with a deliberate metallic clink. My father blinked, momentarily stunned, as if he hadn't processed the words properly. "What did you just say to me?" "I said no," I replied, keeping my voice entirely devoid of emotion. "I am not paying $2,800 for a mortgage this month. Not this month, and not ever again." Arthur's face instantly flushed a dangerous shade of crimson. He slammed his fist onto the table, making the glasses rattle. "How dare you? After everything I've done for you, you sit there acting like a bitter, selfish brat. Your brother is trying to buy a home to build a stable life, and you can't even help your own father keep a property running. You're just jealous because Brandon is finally getting ahead." Brandon shook his head in dramatic disappointment. "Honestly, Rachel, I thought you were better than this. It's pathetic how resentful you are." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. Instead, I unlocked my phone, opened the official county land records database, and pulled up the certified deed for the Pine Street property. I slid the screen across the table, right next to Brandon's shiny $350,000 check. "Read the top line, Dad," I said quietly. "Whose name is on that title? Who signed for the primary mortgage? It isn't yours. It's mine. I own that house legally, financially, and completely. And starting today, the free ride is officially over." Arthur stared at the glowing phone screen, his mouth opening and closing as the legal reality finally pierced through his rage. Brandon leaned in, his confident smirk vanishing as he read my name clearly printed on the public deed. "You've been collecting $3,500 in cash rent every single month," I continued, holding my father's wide-eyed gaze. "You pay the $2,800 mortgage and pocket the $700 difference while I take on all the legal liability. Well, effective immediately, I am contacting the tenants. They will deposit their rent directly into my account." Arthur's face paled from anger to absolute panic. "Rachel, you can't do that. That rental income is how I cover my business overhead. If you take that money, I can't afford the loan payments on the equity line. Then you shouldn't have taken out a massive loan to buy a grown man a house he didn't earn," I said smoothly. Without that $700 profit margin, and with the sudden burden of having to pay the property expenses himself, Arthur's entire financial house of cards began to collapse in real time. But I wasn't finished. I opened my banking app right in front of them and placed immediate hold on the secondary business credit account where I was listed as a co-signer. In less than 2 minutes, I stripped away every piece of financial leverage my father had been using to subsidize my brother's spoiled existence. The financial dominoes fell faster than either of them could have anticipated. Within 48 hours, the bank flagged Arthur's sudden massive equity withdrawal after noticing the frozen secondary credit accounts and the shift in his verified income streams. An immediate asset audit was triggered, placing a complete freeze on the pending funds, including the $350,000 cashier's check Brandon was clutching so tightly. My phone rang incessantly on Tuesday morning. When I finally answered, Brandon's voice came through the speaker in a frantic, breathy panic, completely stripped of the smug entitlement he displayed at the dinner table. "Rachel, you have to fix this right now," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "The title company says the check bounced because Dad's accounts are under review. The sellers are threatening to pull the house off the market and sue me for breach of contract. You need to co-sign the secondary guarantor form with the bank so they release the funds." I leaned back in my office chair, listening to the desperate noise on the other end of the line. "Brandon," I said, my voice steady and measured, "you are 30 years old. You have never held a stable job for more than 6 months, and you expected our father to destroy his retirement just so you could pretend to be a homeowner. We're family, Rachel. he yelled, sounding like a child throwing a tantrum. You have the credit score to fix this. Family doesn't use family as a financial doormat, I replied cold and clear. Good luck with your contract. I hung up the phone, ignoring his frantic callbacks. In the months following that Sunday dinner, my father and brother were forced to confront the harsh reality of their choices. Without my financial backing or the rental property income to cover his debts, Arthur had no choice but to sell his primary residence, downsize into a small 2-bedroom apartment, and pay off the massive equity loan he had recklessly taken out. Brandon never got his $350,000 house. Instead, he was forced to finally get a full-time job, rent a modest studio, and learn what it actually means to earn his own living. As for me, taking full control of the Pine Street property was the best decision I ever made. I renovated the unit, secured fantastic long-term tenants, and used the monthly rental profits to build a thriving real estate portfolio of my own. My father thought he could exploit my quiet reliability to fund my brother's unearned luxury, but in standing up for myself, I permanently broke the cycle of financial manipulation in our family. What would you have done if your family demanded you pay for a sibling's entitlement? Comment below and let me know. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next recommended story on screen. Thanks for watching.